Imagine discovering a city lost to time, a civilization so perfectly preserved it feels as if its people simply walked away moments ago. This was the scene that greeted Dr. Aris Thorne and his team in the highlands of Peru, the lost city of Calampa, a name whispered only in forgotten legends. Here, textiles still held their vibrant color, pottery sat on tables awaiting a meal, and the stone streets were swept clean by centuries of wind. It was an archaeologist's dream, a silent testament to a culture frozen in its final moments. The air was still, heavy with the scent of dry earth and ancient stone. For days, the only sounds were the team's hushed whispers and the scrape of their tools. The silence was perfect, reverent. Then, one evening, as the sun bled across the Andean peaks, they heard it, a faint sound, carried on the wind. It was a melody, a mournful tune from a lone flute, seemingly miles away. Then, a shadow flickered at the edge of vision, too quick to register. The team dismissed it as fatigue, a trick of the high-altitude light, but the city was no longer silent. It was beginning to wake up. The first incident was subtle. A junior researcher, cataloging ceramics in the main plaza, looked up and saw a woman in an ancient woven shawl walk calmly across the square and disappear into an alley. He called out, but no one was there. He shook his head, blaming the altitude. But then it happened again. The team's lead historian, Dr. Lena Petrova, was mapping a residential structure when she heard the distinct sound of children laughing from an empty room. Soon, these isolated experiences became shared. Standing in the city's heart, the entire team would suddenly see the plaza fill with the ghostly images of its former inhabitants. Merchants haggling over produce, artisans chipping at stone, priests in feathered headdresses climbing the Great Pyramid. These weren't spirits in the traditional sense. They were echoes, fragments of memory imprinted onto the very fabric of the place playing on a loop. The team was no longer observing a ruin. They were watching a living memory. The initial awe curdled into a deep, unsettling fear. The past was not just present. It was pervasive, and its hold was tightening. The line between observer and participant began to blur. The team found themselves caught in these shared visions with increasing frequency. The daily life scenes started to shift, becoming more intense, more ritualistic. They would stand frozen, watching processions of chanting priests march toward the central temple, their faces grim and determined. The air would grow thick with the phantom smell of burning copal incense. During these episodes, a strange phenomenon occurred. Some of the team members would find themselves disoriented, unable to distinguish the present from the hallucinated past. One geologist was found trying to barter his modern GPS device with a ghostly vendor for a handful of phantom coca leaves. The most chilling aspect was the voice. A disembodied layered whisper that seemed to emanate from the stones themselves, speaking in the lost Calampan dialect. It was a command, a collective thought from the city's memory, repeating with chilling clarity, "Prepare the offering. The time is now." The psychological toll was immense. The team's mission shifted from archaeology to survival. The city was no longer a passive site of study. It was an active participant, and it seemed to want something from them. The echoes became more than just visions. They became compulsions. Dr. Thorne found himself inexplicably drawn to the high priest's chambers, his hands tracing the ceremonial carvings as if remembering a long-forgotten duty. Dr. Petrova, the Stoic historian, was discovered in a storeroom, carefully draping herself in a fragile ancient burial shroud. They weren't just witnessing the rituals. The city was pushing them to reenact them. They were becoming the actors in a play written centuries ago. The illusion of control was gone. The team's log entries became frantic, describing an overwhelming urge to complete a ceremony they did not understand. Deep within the shared hallucination, a new chant began to rise, a guttural, terrifying demand that resonated not in their ears, but in their bones. The blood must flow for the harvest. The city was hungry, and it was casting them in the starring roles of its final, terrible act. What happens when a place is so saturated with human emotion, with intense ritual and belief, that it develops a will of its own? This is the question the survivors of the Kalampa expedition are left with. The city isn't haunted by the ghosts of its people. The city is the ghost. It is a sentient memory, a cultural echo that has waited centuries for new bodies to inhabit, new hands to carry out its ancient, cyclical drama. The rituals that sustained it in the past demand to be completed, and the stones themselves will conscript anyone who lingers too long. The need for the harvest, the demand for the offering, it is the city's very consciousness, its unyielding purpose. The survivors speak of an intelligence in the ruins, a predatory awareness that studied them, tested them, and ultimately tried to consume them. The official report is sealed. The Peruvian government has declared the entire valley a prohibited zone, closing it off indefinitely to prevent anyone else from stumbling into this living nightmare. They say the site is too dangerous, but the truth is far more terrifying. They sealed it off because they know the city is still there, still conscious, still waiting. And even now, from the silent, forbidden peaks, you can sometimes hear it, carried on the wind. A faint, mournful melody from a lone flute, patiently calling for its people to come home.